Thanks everyone for joining me and joining this webinar today, getting started in cybersecurity. All right, let's get started meeting everybody. For the panelists here, why don't we do this? Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what company you're with, maybe what you do there, and also share, what makes your company unique? What do you guys do great over there? Brian, welcome. Why don't we start with you?
My name is Brian Banks. I'm with Lone Star Communications. Been with the company for 15 years. I'm the Information Security Officer, and our primary markets are education and healthcare. And I think that we're great, awesome at making community safer, and also within the healthcare institutions, we create and maintain outstanding patient experiences with the solutions that we develop and install.
Great, thank you. Over to you, Jim.
Jim DeStefano. I'm with Unlimited Technology. I'm the Senior Vice President for the organization. For me, I've been in the security business for a little over 35 years, so I've been around all sides of this business. What's great for Unlimited Technology is that, we started out as a camera and card reader integrator, but, we've really evolved since then. And, we've evolved into having our own cyber products, our own cyber portfolio. We've gotten into AV, we've gotten into low voltage. So we've really diversified the organization. So we're not just a card reader and camera company anymore. Really looking forward to this, and hopefully we can get some information out there, and it's all good. So
thanks for joining us, Jim. Appreciate it. Matt, over to you.
Matt Thorne, Executive Vice President, Electronic Contracting Company. So we provide integrated solutions throughout the Midwest, from Nebraska down to Arkansas, from Missouri on over to Kansas. So 6 different locations. Like I said, serving the Midwest. Some of my roles is overseeing IT, which is why I'm here today, and also managing our product lines. One of the things that I'm really proud, I've been here for 25 years. I'm really proud about our company and what we do is our ability to integrate all these different systems together, from security to healthcare solutions to audiovisual, to fire alarm. And, we've got a team of programmers that's what they do each and every day, is they tie all these different systems together to make them do some really cool things.
Amazing stuff. Thank you for joining. Tom, over to you.
Well, thanks, Rob. I'm Tom LeBlanc. I'm the Director of Industry Outreach for NSCA. NSCA, if you don't know, is a trade association for the integration market. We're a little unique in that we're extremely focused on the business side of running an integration company. We figure, most of you folks out there running integration companies, you're pretty good at the technical side. So, what we try to do is we try to provide resources and consultations to make sure you stay on top of the all-important business side of things as well. So my role, I'm just trying to, help create, a lot of that content and a lot of the resources that we offer. And another part of my role is to try to get the word out to integrators to make sure what we're offering and how to take advantage of it. So I'm thrilled to be here today.
Great, Tom. I'm excited about the stuff you're going to share as well. I know we chatted a little bit about that. So if you're a technology integrator, you're in the right webinar. This is a great webinar for you to learn from these folks. If you're not a technology integrator, you're also in a great webinar, because the chances are organizations like these folks are coming into your buildings, installing IP-enabled devices and connecting to your network. So really excited. I think let's get started here. I think the first thing I wanted to talk about was, each of you have some cybersecurity program in place. And with security, when people begin to implement that, it's always with some type of catalyst to get going. Maybe you read in a magazine about a cyber incident, or maybe another business had an incident there, or perhaps you had an incident. Maybe you can share a little bit about why you got started, implementing a cybersecurity program inside of your organization. Maybe we can start with Brian. Do you want to share a little bit on that, Brian?
Sure, absolutely. I had previously attended several PSA techs that had cybersecurity as one of the topics. And I attended as many as I could. And what really was the catalyst, though, is when I returned, we literally had an incident that was ground shaking for us. It didn't complete, so it was stopped at the very last minute. But that was the moment that for me and the company and the C-level executives, we started taking it really serious.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Matt, how about yourself? And what was the catalyst at your organization?
Well, I mean, especially the last couple of years, you read about in the news all the time how ransomware attacks are being deployed, and they're really starting to target small businesses now. And to think about how, something like that could take down a business in a heartbeat, and all operations, will cease. And it's a pretty scary thought when you think about it. I always thought physical security, card readers on your doors and so forth are important. Having a intrusion system on your premise to protect, in the overnight hours when it's not occupied is important. But man, it's you really got to focus on the cybersecurity aspect of the business, and that's not. And I know we'll get into this later. It's not just your network infrastructure. It's every single person within your business. It starts with them.
Very, very true. Jim, how about you on your side?
Yeah, so for us, it was really, being a systems integrator, and we're the 9th largest integrator in the country. So, we've got some very large clientele and critical infrastructure, and one of those customers is a large utility. So, working with their physical security side of it, we realized quickly that they were looking for a solution, which is what we provide, right? We provide solutions, and they were looking for a solution to some cyber and some things that were happening with them. And we started working with them, and we quickly realized that look, the cybersecurity market in 2021 is estimated to reach about, I think it's like 182 billion dollars in 2021. And we realized that the cost of cyber crime in 2021 should probably exceed, or probably will exceed, $6 trillion worldwide through 2021, and they're expecting that in 2022 it'll exceed $8 trillion. So there's really a need out there for companies that are having issues to really bolster their cybersecurity status. So we look at that, and so we've developed some programs that I think we'll talk about a little bit later on. But that was really an impetus for us. So customer needs, as well as seeing that there's a need out in the marketplace.
Yeah, I want to dig in a little bit more with you later on in the webinar in regards to you folks implementing all of those different solutions and taking it to market. Matt, Brian, I want to dig in a little bit more on this. So cybersecurity is complex, and I liked how you guys compared physical security. So alarm systems, cameras, access control, you have to have all these layers. And in cybersecurity, you've got to do the exact same thing as well. And when you first get started, it can be a little bit complicated. Where do you begin? Where do you start? Let's start with Matt. Can you share a little bit about where you began? Like, how did you get started? What did you start implementing?
Yeah, so one of the first things we did was we took a look at our outward facing infrastructure, our firewalls and so forth, and started working inwards. And so we took a look. We never really even had a network diagram of our business. So we created that just so we could get the big picture of what this whole thing looks like, right? Because especially it's important with multiple offices. It'll expose any gaps. And we found a couple that were exposed just by simply doing that. And so after we created that, we took a look at all that physical aspect of that network infrastructure. And then what we did is, when we felt pretty comfortable, we engaged in the penetration testing. And left that to the pros to see if they can get in. I got to say, it was kind of nerve-wracking for a while to see, like, oh my gosh, are these guys getting in or what? So yeah, we started with that, and then just moved on to focusing internally on our employees, make sure that they're trained up and they're vigilant.
Excellent. And doing the employee training and so on. Brian, how about you? Where did you start?
For me, it was developing a roadmap and truly understanding what cybersecurity meant in the civilian world, coming from having a military background. And we initially went in looking at the human firewall, training, and just getting everybody used to, as much as possible, what to look for in emails. Because we kept hearing that BEC was one of the largest things that was everyone was falling victim to. So we immediately jumped on training and just kept pushing on training. And at that point, we started looking at, multi-factor authentications and harden the network, IP addresses, removing default passwords, things like that. We're kind of spread it out at Lone Star. So it was a little bit of an undertaking getting all that kicked off, but those were some of the first things that we initially took off on.
That's great. Thanks for sharing, Brian. I'm going to keep you in the hot seat there because you mentioned at the beginning intro there that you had a cyber incident that occurred or something that you looked at. Would you be open to sharing a little bit around that with everybody here?
Absolutely. It was kind of a normal day, and our CFO came over to me. He was very, very alarmed. And after I saw what he presented to me, I was alarmed as well. And that was a correspondence between our CEO and himself in regarding a financial transaction. These type of conversations were not abnormal for him, and they sometimes develop and have conversations through text messaging, which was unique. It started out as text messaging and evolved into over into emails, and it was and it was quite a substantial amount, but it was stopped at the very last moment at the bank when they reached out to the CEO, and that was very, very alarming because that would have been very disruptive to our business.
This is a wire transfer fraud where the attacker's utilizing text messaging and email both together, posing as the CEO with the CFO.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. In fact, back during those years, you could easily do SMS spoofing over the internet. It's not that easy to do it now, but back then it was quite easy to do that. So it was two parts.
So the controls at the bank is what sort of stopped that from actually occurring, right?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Anybody else want to share an incident maybe that they had at their organization? Willing to do that?
We had a couple of them. One of them was, our accounting department received an email from one of our employees, saying, "Hey, I'm at a new financial institution now. My direct deposit has changed, and here's my information." Well, they performed the change, and the actual employee, the next pay period said, "Guys, where's my check? Well, we sent it to you, direct deposit, per your request." "I never sent you a request." Okay, so that's what that incident led to, some process changes that we made. So yeah, that was a learning experience by far. But also we had another case where somebody broke into one of our employees in accounting, their email account, and just was sitting back and watching all traffic, and at the right time they injected and started sending emails on behalf of the employee to one of our customers, changing up what our invoices look like with incorrect addresses and so forth. Right. Luckily, particular customer was vigilant and caught that and let us know, and we fixed that. Since then, we've deployed two-factor authentication throughout the company.
Yeah, so you had the business email compromise, and the first one, you mentioned about the employee, them acting like the employee and getting those changes. There's so much information about us on social media. It's pretty easy to go on LinkedIn and see who works where and be able to run those types of attacks. Jim, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I think it's we've had a number of them where we've had attempts on different things. One is again very similar to what Brian had said. Something an email coming from our CEO to our procurement team that getting close to the holidays, I need you to order 7 $500 gift cards and send them to me, shoot them over to me, and it's like, man, our CEO really doesn't usually do that. So
Right.
Pick up the phone. So and then another one that we have is actually comes through. It's interesting. Comes through the fax machine. Believe it or not, we still use a fax machine. I'm sure probably all of you still have fax machines or get faxes at some point. But we see a lot of spoofing of customers that are coming over from spoof phone numbers that are, "Hey, we're trying to rectify a bill, or we're trying to pay you. We need to get your bank information. Please contact us at this email address," and it's a spoofed email address that goes in. So we've caught a number of those, and they're very fraudulent, and can wreak havoc with the business. So.
Yeah, the gift card one is pretty popular from attackers, and they like to target new employees as well, pretty quick, because they're always have happy to go and run and do whatever is being asked of them at that point in time. It's really important that you get that training put in place really early and ensure that they understand that these attacks might roll at them, which takes me right to that, which is that human factor of cybersecurity. I'm sure, each of you in some way, shape, or form have, put some type of cybersecurity awareness training in place for employees. Have you done that, and what have been the results? Maybe you can share a little bit about what that program looks like. Matt, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. So we deployed the phishing simulations, and I got to say that process has been pretty successful so far. I mean, really, when you think about it, in our organization, we have about 130 employees, right? That's essentially 130 points of potential failure in your company as far as allowing somebody to infiltrate your network or obtain valuable information, right? So it's extremely important that we educate our folks on the red flags. If they see something come across that doesn't look quite right, let's question it and send it to our IT team for them to take a look at that, right? So we're still working on that. And, at first we found a lot of folks were click happy, per se.
Right.
And, but they've gotten so much better with this. And, what that equates to is they're all talking now. And, hey, did you get this email? Yeah, I did. And it's bogus. And it's good to see that happening within your company.
Well, I think each of you shared that, a lot of these incidents that occurred came via email. So even though you do have, spam protection systems in place, email filter systems, they're still getting through and landing in the inbox. So that makes a lot of sense. Tom, I know you guys have these type of things in place as well. What are you folks doing over there?
Yeah, well, we do a lot of that stuff through you guys, through Defendify. And, we get a kick out of the videos. They're educational, but they're also kind of entertaining.
Right.
So we get the videos periodically. By the way, I particularly like the ones that start John Lovitz. But these short videos, they do sort of force you to think about potential threats. You get to think about them differently. And sometimes it's not about you. Like sometimes you can recognize the situation and you can recognize what you would do in the situation, but you also start to become aware of how some of your colleagues might react differently. And that's, I think that's very helpful to, start thinking about, the risk of how other people might perceive, different outreaches for information and fall into those traps. So we get the videos periodically, which means we all kind of watch them around the same time. And we also have these staff meetings almost every morning. And a lot of times we have a discussion about them. I think that helps a lot as well, because we end up applying the scenario in the video to how it could potentially impact us in our work lives. And plus, we also have the strategic phishing emails, and we have a lot of team conversations about those whenever those arise. On Slack, for instance, there'll be a thing where everyone's like, did you see this email? It seems kind of suspect. And then it usually ends with, it's probably Rob.
The Defendify team sending it at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, the platform automates all that, makes it easy, and I'm glad you guys are using it. Brian, how about you folks? What are you guys doing over there?
Same thing. We, as Matt and Tom stated, we're using you guys, and it's really awesome for me, just knowing from where we started to see everyone having those type of conversations. Initially, it was, I would say it was very disruptive because everybody was really afraid to click on anything. And so what we were seeing is everything was getting phished, everything was getting checked. And as the training occurred and they watched the videos, they began to identify, okay, this is obviously fake. So we're going to just delete it, or they'll send it over and have it checked out. So the training has worked really well for us. And for our guys that are in the field that are using mobile devices, we are getting a really good response back from them as well, because they're not in the office and they're working and they're checking their cell phones. And a lot of times that stuff will get clicked on either right before they're going to lunch or right after, or where they know that they're very vulnerable, but now they're starting to catch a lot of that stuff. And I know that is 100% from the training.
That's great. One of the things I wanted to talk to you folks about was the conversations that are happening from a business risk perspective. We think about cybersecurity. It's not necessarily just about technical controls being put in place. It's really a business risk conversation. And, some organizations, even at the board level, the board's having conversations about it, and it's actually an item that they discuss at those meetings. So for your organizations today, are you talking at the leadership level regularly about cybersecurity and then budgeting cybersecurity, getting that inside there so that you ensure it gets taken care of? Maybe Brian, you can start.
Absolutely. I already know that we've had, as we're scaling up, we've had SWATs, and cybersecurity is always at the highest of the conversations. It's something that everybody identifies. It's a big threat. And so we include cybersecurity in just about every step of that scaling up process. I mean, we know it's not going away, and it's a big disruption. So we definitely stay on top of it with our executives. It's an easy conversation to have. I know early on, I heard a lot about executive buy-ins. That wasn't complicated at all for us here. Once we had that incident, it became a very easy conversation.
Very good. Matt, how about at your group?
Well, cybersecurity is like insurance, right? I mean, so you have to have an insurance policy for protection, right? But you have to budget for that and so forth. And so, 2-3 years ago, we never really factored that in. We never really budgeted for that. And, like I alluded to earlier, you see this in news all the time. And so what we have to do is we got to educate ourselves more about this. What can we do? What have we done in the past? What can we change? How can we educate better? And, we use we use Defendify as well. And you guys have been a great resource for us. And the videos, I agree with Tom. They are excellent videos. They're just short clips, couple 3 minutes long, that do a fantastic job of teaching people the do's and the don'ts in a fun way. So yeah, budgeting for this is very important. You treat this no different than anything else that you deploy in your organization.
Jim, because you're working with companies and helping them with cybersecurity, are you seeing a trend here where this has now become a leadership conversation and people are budgeting? What are you seeing as a trend?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we, from our perspective, first of all, we started a year ago with Defendify and rolling out some training there, and we saw, we started the phishing pieces, right, and we saw a decrease from 15% click-throughs down to now I think we're down to like 3% click-throughs, and those 3% that click through, do 100% of the retraining, right? So they get sent to retraining. So we see that, and we started to roll that out to some of our customers as well, and that's really important for us. So, we've actually developed a whole program based off of the NIST standards and the NIST control standards, and it's something that we live internally with our company, but now we're rolling that out through what we call our ESPR program, or Enterprise Security Program Review Program, that we roll out with our customers to really talk to the leaders of companies. Not, it's our company and it's other companies, right, that we're talking to, of how they really need to beef up cyber controls. And we've partnered with good partners like Defendify, and others as well. So, and we've got our own product as well, our Xero product. But, for us, it's really been a conversation about, what are the risks? How do you want to control those risks? And, and in some cases, it's how much can you afford to control those risks, right? So it's kind of that risk and reward type of thing where, there's a cost benefit and return on investment. So, yeah, these have been big conversations for us. In fact, just real quickly, we instituted what we call the Iron Dome on our system, and we found that one of our systems actually shut down because we got caught within our own cybersecurity control. So we actually shut one of our systems down, putting it under the control, and had to go back and revamp and make sure that we were compliant because we missed something. So for us, that was a real eye opener, right, to be able to do that. So we've got real world experience, not only for ourselves, but now for our customers to be able to help them as well.
That's great. Tom, you seeing the same thing? Is Chuck talking about cybersecurity, and as he's leading the group there? And you're a smaller organization, so I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and also it's an organization that we hope will, set an example for the member companies that we work with. So yeah, it's part of the budget. We also have what we call a strategic planning grid. So the idea behind that is we try to plan out, what we do, and we try to align everybody's tasks with the things that we think are most important, the most important objectives for the organization. So cybersecurity has a very significant presence in that. And that I think having it there helps us as an organization to keep it very front of mind from a strategic standpoint. I think that that's one of the things with cybersecurity. It's the type of thing where companies will have these meetings, and everyone will be in agreement, and everyone will be on board with how important of a priority it is. But then, as long as there isn't a breach, sometime soon after that, it starts to drift to the back of people's minds, and that's a problem. So for us, that strategic grid kind of helps us to keep it front of mind.
That's great. On that point, you're talking about everybody inside the organization really needs to be a part of the cybersecurity program. Like if you don't have buy-in from all the technicians and finance and sales and everything, then all it takes is just that, that one individual who's not in to really be part of that issue. Are you doing anything unique at your organizations to promote cybersecurity, things to get people engaged, in whatever way, shape, or form that might be? Brian, I know you shared something unique that you do at your group. Maybe you can share that with everyone.
Yes, we have a company newsletter that we have going out. And what we're starting to do is we're going to actually start listing those individuals who are really working to help keep us protected. We have certain people that actually fish over a lot of items, or they notified me of something suspicious. And I wanted to actually be able to recognize them in our company newsletter, of them taking those extra steps to keep our data and our customers' data protected.
That's great. Celebrating the cyber defenders. I love it.
Yes.
Jim, how about in your group?
Yeah, so it's really become the Defendify once a month is 100% participation. It's mandatory, right? So all of our managers get a report. I think it's usually like 5 days after the video comes out, right? We go back and we make sure that if you have employees who haven't taken it, you're making a call and saying, hey, it's really important. It's 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes of your time, right? And I think over the year, it's become, what we get back is, hey, that was a great video, and I'm telling my kids and I'm telling my neighbors about it, and things to watch out for. And it's really, really opened the eyes of some people to, continually reinforce that, hey, it is important for us. It is part of our business. So, a lot of our technical folks are in it day to day, right? Because they're dealing with our customers and their cyber, program. So, for us, it's keeping it forefront and making sure it's relevant to all our employees. Because again, if they're talking about it, not only internally to the company, but outside the company, it brings it, it helps alleviate the risk of losses to other companies. And we're starting to see some say, hey, I was talking to my neighbor and they run a company down here and they're really interested. How'd you do that? Or how are we doing that? And, how can we help them? So started conversations there as well.
That's great. Love it. Matt, how about you folks? Anything interesting, unique going on over there and to reinforce cybersecurity?
Like Brian's got the newsletter that, that Lone Star does. What we do is something like that. We use, it's like an internal Facebook. It's called Yammer. It seems like not a lot of people have heard of that, but it's kind of internal social networking. And so, we like to promote on Yammer. If someone, saw a suspicious email, we'll put it out across that. But, one of the things our technology manager did was, I know it's very simple and a lot of companies do it, but he implemented the bright yellow banner on the top of the email if it originates outside of your company. There's a lot of grumbling about that, but you know what? A lot of people are starting to catch on now that, this came from outside the business. I need to be extra cautious on this one now before I proceed with replying to this one or clicking on a link. So again, something so basic, but something so powerful too.
I think a couple of you shared that, when your teams discover a phishing email, whether it's the phishing simulation or, a real phishing attack coming across, that they're sharing it in those channels. I think that's great. I think continuing to push that, as a team and promoting awareness hey, check this out, I just received this, gives that warning across and continues to make everyone aware. One of the catalysts that we hear a lot from people in regards to getting a cybersecurity program started is cybersecurity assessments. So I did a webinar with a group, and they were the risk assessment team at Iron Mountain, and they shared exactly why they're reviewing vendors, having them do cybersecurity questionnaires, explaining what their cybersecurity looks like. And when we think about technology integrators, you folks have some privileged access in what you do every day. Your techs are installing devices right in the network, you're deploying servers, you're actually in the IT rooms. Are you seeing this as a trend where assessments are happening more and more often on your company? And are you actually seeing project requirements, stating that you must have cybersecurity in place? Maybe Jim, do you want to start?
Yeah, so a lot of work we do is within critical infrastructure. So especially in that vertical, we're seeing a lot of requirements come down on the specifics of analyzing us. What do we do? What's our safeguards and everything that we take into play? And I think it's also it's also important that the industry is starting to realize that there's a need for cybersecurity and continuing to train in that regards. And there's the security industry cybersecurity certification that's coming about that really SIA is promoting through PSA, and I'm trying to think of who the other security specifiers, right? That's something that's going to probably come about in the next year or so, that you're going to start to see in a lot of the specifications come out for projects, that you have to have somebody with the SIC certification, right, with this SICC certification on your staff to show that they've done the training and they're cyber secure, and that you've invested in them. So I think that's real important, and I think that's going to be beneficial for the organizations as a whole. So yeah, we definitely see it out there, and it's not only just critical infrastructure; it's all the verticals we deal with. They're all starting to ask, how are you going to take care of my network if you're putting something out there?
Right. Brian, I know you do a lot of work in healthcare. Are you seeing the long cybersecurity questionnaires come across your desk?
Absolutely. It's becoming a normal. And initially, that was a major resource for us to actually learn what those CISO's requirements for the health institutions, what the requirements were. And at that point, I really learned that building a good relationship and learning a lot from those CISOs, kind of helped, internally us as well. And also in the healthcare vertical, the education vertical, we're seeing it as well. Here in Texas, we have House Bill 3834, which is now a requirement for even our education side technicians to go in to actually have that training. So we're both seeing it on healthcare and education as well.
Yeah. Matt, are you seeing the same thing out your way?
We are, like Brian, healthcare is a big one. Government projects too is also another big one. Healthcare, in terms of HIPAA, when you're installing, nurse call solutions, you're dealing with patient data. And so they want to see how you're going to handle that. What's your systems like? Because if we need to be able to trust you with this data, because there's a lot of liability, to think about. So obviously government, pretty self-explanatory there. They want to make sure that besides your policies, your IT policies, the equipment that you're deploying on premise, it follows to their standards too. So what are you doing to, integrator? What are you doing to make sure that this equipment abides by those policies?
Yeah, we're going to come back in a second. I do want to discuss cyber hardening, your deployments and so on. But before we go over to that way, Tom, because your group is so involved with the integrator community, and you see inside so many groups and have so many conversations. Is this a trend that's happening? Like, cybersecurity assessments are obviously not going anywhere, but are you continuing to hear from people saying, how do we handle this? How do we deal with it?
Yeah, well, in terms of the assessments, reaching out. I think what we're hearing is that integrators are getting pressed for their cybersecurity credibility in a few different ways. One of them is, I think customers are, reaching out and testing the waters in their communication with integrators, In other words, if you don't do a good job communicating with your customer and, being really careful about the information you're going to disclose to your customer, that customer has to be thinking, well, he's not going to be careful with my critical information as well. So I think that part of it is really important. And, NSCA as an organization really recommends that integrators take that very seriously. How you communicate with your customer is almost like, well, of course it's a job interview, but pay attention to that part of it. Pay attention to the fact that your customers are going to be analyzing, that part of the communication. But, other ways that it's becoming a factor in terms of like demonstrating credibility, we're hearing a lot that, we're hearing from members that are telling us that their insurance companies want to know, about cybersecurity training, and that's a requirement. So that's an increasing thing that we're hearing from members. But yeah, as I think, I forget if it was Jim or Brian who mentioned it, but, customers are definitely, like also looking for that credibility in project contracts as well. They want integrators to indicate, some kind of cyber training, what's their response going to be if there's a cyber breach. So integrators have to kind of put it down on paper. What are they doing to make sure that they're protecting customers' private information? And they also want to know what kind of insurance you have. But customer specs are starting, to say that integrators need to have some sort of cyber certification, as, Jim alluded to, I think.
Mhm.
And others are doing it in more of a vague way. I think they're just trying to make sure that you put down on paper, some way that you can indicate how you've been trained on cybersecurity. I think the important takeaway at this point is, we talked a little bit about different markets, demanding that credibility. So right now, I think it depends on the vertical markets and the types of companies that you're working with, whether or not you're perceiving that there's a lot of demand for this cybersecurity credibility documentation or whatever you want to call it, but you will see a lot more of that. It's not going to diminish. It's going to escalate, and it's going to expand to, it'll expand from what you might think of now as a mission critical project to almost every project you're going to be working on. So it's something that NSCA really recommends that people pay a lot of attention to.
I'm just going to jump in real quick. I think it's really important that, I'm going to reiterate that security industry cybersecurity certification that, that SIA is putting out, that's really going out there, because I think that's going to be really beneficial for a lot of the integrators out there, anybody who's working with security, physical security systems or any type of systems that are out there. That's going to be something that I think is going to be critical. And like Tom said, we're going to start to see more of that, more requirements of those types of certifications. So, I suggest if you haven't seen it, go out there and take a look at it and see what's involved in that, because it will be coming around pretty quick, I think.
Yeah, and if you're an integrator and you have not seen a cybersecurity assessment, get ready for it. It's happening.
Right.
We had someone come running to us, just a little while ago, who signed a pretty solid video surveillance project, and then right away the risk team sent over the questionnaire with cybersecurity, and they had to start checking the boxes. And they said, "You're not going to start deploying anything until we do a full review on your organization." Shanna, did you want to share something? I think you were.
I was going to say that actually was a perfect segue to one of the questions that we had come in through the Q&A, which was, what cyber certifications would you recommend for an integrator to achieve, to hold as an organization, to show knowledge of cyber and show warmth to the end user, like ISO, SOC 2, Type 2?
Yeah, are any of you getting asked about certifications at that level? Like, if you're ISO certified, or if you've done anything with SOC and so on, have you seen that yet?
So, for us, some of the questionnaires we've gotten have referred to that, or how are we protecting our data? How are we protecting our customers' data? And again, I think it's going to revolve around not only how are we protecting our data and their data, but who do we have that's protecting data, right? And what's their certification? So I think you're going to start to see more of that training that's going to be needed by, the folks out in the field, to be able to demonstrate that, not only do I know how to put it in, but I know how to protect it as well.
Right. Tom, can you share a little bit about some of the bills that are coming through and regulations? I know you folks track a ton of that. Can you share a little bit with the integration community about, what you're seeing there?
Yeah, and that's a great segue, actually. So yeah, I recommend that everybody, after this webinar, of course, go to nsca.org and click on the advocacy tab, and then click on track legislation. And then from there, you could use our tracking tool to specifically follow proposed bills. So you can select states that you're interested in, and then you can click on categories. So cybersecurity IoT is a category that you can choose. So I definitely recommend signing up for that to, kind of keep an eye on cybersecurity related bills that touch this industry. In terms of regulations, we're trying to get ahead of this, right? Like NSCA, I mean, we believe that we'll start to see more and more regulations that require contractors, such as integrators who install systems on a network, that they're going to have cybersecurity training and certification. We expect to see this, right? So that would include IoT, we think, but it also think about, like you said, everything else that integrators install that touch a network. So from an advocacy standpoint, NSCA does a lot of stuff. We track bills, we participate in this Connected Technologies Consortium to team with other organizations and influential companies to battle against laws that we think might negatively affect integrators' businesses. I want to be really clear. We think this will be a major focus of our advocacy going forward. We expect these bills to be coming. Now, it's not about like drawing a line in the sand and opposing bills like this, but we want to make sure that the laws would be worded properly and that they'd give integrators a fair shake. But that goes both ways, because when we're talking about this certification thing, integrators need to accept that they do need cybersecurity training and in some cases, perhaps certification. The thing is, we don't want lawmakers to determine what certification integrators need to have. So we want to have the credentialing and the training take place in the industry, rather than be told what we have to do. So NSCA is in the process of exploring multiple standards and certification programs, including what SIA, Security Industry Association, is offering, which is a great organization that we work really closely with. We're trying to figure out what NSCA recommends in terms of what we want integrators to adopt as an industry. That's a very big focus for NSCA right now, trying to figure out what the right decision is in terms of pointing integrators toward a certification body.
Give us the website and the link again.
So nsca.org. The thing to do is to click on the advocacy tab, and really you'll figure it out from there. But then you track legislation. You click track legislation, and then it's pretty self-explanatory. You'll be able to find where you can learn about cybersecurity bills.
Thank you. All right, I want to jump into the actual deployment side for a second, because I think from the customer's perspective, they know that, technicians are going out installing a variety of different devices on their networks, and that they need to be set up properly. Cyber hardened, I think, is the word that most of us use when they go out and do that. No default passwords, configuring properly. I see as well, one of the challenges is that, a lot of these devices need updates and patches regularly, and that's sometimes not happening, or that conversation is not occurring. And I think that there's a unique relationship between the manufacturers who produce the equipment and the integrator who's installing it. And I've seen some manufacturers do a great job of, developing cyber hardening guides and so on. Just wanted to start maybe sharing a little bit about what your organization's doing. How is that relationship, with your manufacturers? Are you seeing them start to give training and guidance specific to their products? Brian, do you want to begin for me?
Sure. One of our products, the Telecenter Campus, Telecenter U, we noticed that on those installations, several ports are closed by default, and that was their form of hardening from the factory. And we utilize some of those ports when we're configuring. So we definitely wanted our technicians to be educated on port configuring, changing default passwords, making sure telnet ports, things like that, were actually closed and remained documented that they were closed at the time of configuring. A lot of the products that we actually are seeing kind of go forward with that same manner of setup. And so we kind of on the training that we actually do here internally, we actually train them on networking from port configuring and also authentications. We're seeing a lot of that now for SIP integrations. You know, at one point there was not a lot of authenticating that was necessary, but now as we see our customers' networks become hardened, you know, that's one thing that they are requiring is that all SIP devices do authenticate. So that was a major part as well.
Great. Matt, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a part of our vetting process, really. And so when we take on new products or take a look at them, there's several steps that we do. But one of the steps is checking out their the hardening best practices, or what's it might be even calling into the manufacturer and opening up a ticket and talking to somebody that might know about that and see if that's important to them or not. Because if not, then we probably will, that's probably not a good fit for us, right? And so once we take that information in and we vet that product, it's essentially built into our internal training programs for our technicians, so they can see what those procedures are. And it's constantly changing, as we are probably aware of. And so it's honestly kind of a chore. It's kind of a task keeping up with this stuff, but very important, because the last thing we need is to place a device on a customer's network only to find out that all fingers are pointing at us because we didn't do our due diligence to figure out if that product is compliant or not.
Right. So you're vetting out manufacturers based on having proper cybersecurity, and your customers are vetting you out to make sure that you've got proper cybersecurity. So it's all coming around. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I agree with everybody here. I mean, it's a matter of, you know, we have to do our due diligence on the products that we're pushing out to our customers, right? So, you know, and that is a really, really hard, drawn out process, right? Because, you know, like, you know, Unlimited Technology, we have a lot of products that we represent, and we can provide for solutions. So for us, keeping track is really key. So we rely on a lot of these manufacturers to be able to push out any breaches that they have, any security, you know, threats that they know about, any kind of faults that they may have, because then we have to push that out and sometimes to our customers.
Right.
So, you know, we've got to watch and see, you know, does a manufacturer have the capability of, you know, vetting their own product and managing and watching for their own, you know, vulnerabilities, and then be able to push that out, where they're going to sweep it under the rug and just say, hey, you know what, if they find out, then we'll deal with it then. So which is not a good thing, right? And it's not a good thing for anybody in this industry. So, you know, we've actually, you know, we've looked at a couple manufacturers and have actually said no to them because of their cyber policies and how they, you know, how they run their cyber divisions, and where their stuff is coming from, and how they do it. So, you know, to me, that's a big concern.
That's a great point. If you sell a huge variety of different manufacturers, it's hard to keep track of all of that and make sure you're doing that for each of those different ones. It makes it even more challenging than ever. Yeah. Jim, while I have you there, I really want to dig in a little bit about your organization. I think it's really interesting. Do I dare use the word convergence? You know, we read about that many years ago. You know, even when the first IP-enabled DVRs came out, when everyone said, "Oh, if it rides on the network, you know, you're going to own all of it." Your organization is really doing that. You're doing physical security, audiovisual, IT. Now you're doing cybersecurity as well. You know, can you share a little bit about that vision and how that all came together?
Yeah. So, you know, again, you know, born out of understanding what's going on in the world and really keeping track of what's happening in the world, as well as, you know, our customers' requirements and the customers', you know, requests, and you know, looking at it and saying, you know, we really have to diversify, right? You can't be just a card reader and camera company. So, you know, we diversified. We have a sister company that has, you know, called Exero, EXERO, and that's, you know, we now have an Exero partnership program. So any of the integrators that might be on here that are looking for, you know, a way to monitor IP devices for your customers, you know, that partnership's available through our sister company. So you can become a reseller of that, and it's really, you know, to us, it really makes us sticky with our customers, right? Because if you're just that card reader and camera company, you know, you basically come down to commodity now, right? So it's kind of a commodity type. But the more services that we can provide, and the more solutions that we can provide and partner with our customers, really makes us sticky with them. So it doesn't, you know, you're not fighting that dog eat dog, you know, down to the, the penny of, hey, I can get it for $1 less, right? And because we add so much value into the whole realm. But for us, it's been great because through the whole, COVID and everything, we were fortunate enough, we didn't let anybody go. We've got, we've pretty much stayed intact. We've come into this year with a great backlog. And so, for us, it's all those pieces that come together. Yeah, it takes some time to build that. It takes your sales force some time to understand. You have to do a little bit of different selling in some cases, but for us, it's really been a boon for our business. And, we see great things, and we're skyrocketing in sales. So it's been great.
But so, it's interesting because I think a lot around using cybersecurity as a sales tool, meaning like if you go sit in front of the table, you're at the table with the, the IT decision maker, and you're talking about, physical security solutions, and then you can also tell them that you're a cybersecurity provider. Do you think that gives you an advantage in the opportunity?
Yeah, because one of the things so I'm sure most of the folks that are on this webinar will agree that it's not you're not dealing with just if you're a security integrator, you're not dealing with just the security director anymore. You're dealing with the IT folks, you're dealing with the security, you're dealing with risk management, you're dealing with legal, you're dealing with HR. So you've got this you've got this gamut of folks who really could care less what the widget is. They want to know how you're going to do it and how you're going to put it in and what your capabilities are. So for us, being able to bring that cyber piece around and being able to talk about cyber and we've actually had conversations with customers. No, you don't want to use that. You don't want to use that solution because of this, or we would recommend that you go this way because it's more secure. And they really appreciate that, right? And it really makes you sticky with the customer to continue on doing business down the road.
I definitely are seeing a trend where organizations are starting to provide more and more of this variety of different services, whether that's happening through acquisitions or partnerships and so on. Tom, having the view of so many different organizations, is it a trend? Do you think it's happening?
Yeah, I think what NSCA really recommends here is that integrators really need to focus on kind of walking the walk when it comes to cybersecurity. And in your customer facing communication, like we talked about before, in your internal practices also, really in everything an integrator does, you really need to be demonstrating that you take cybersecurity very seriously. I think that's the focus here. Put yourself in the customer's shoes. They're vulnerable. If they contract your firm to work on their network, they need to trust you. They should be judging every single move that you make, and what kind of information are you including in emails? Are you including some kind of authentication steps? Everything you do should be, showing the customers that you're very careful. Think about it this way. About 10 years ago, integrators were kind of in that transition where they had to start talking IT and, kind of thinking IT, and they had to become, more of a digital company. And now that we are in that digital world as an industry in this decade now, there's sort of another step in the evolution, right? So whether you're in AV or you're in security or you're in life safety, I mean, you're in it now. You're in this world. And the need for heightened cybersecurity is only going to escalate, and integrators need to kind of step up to that responsibility. So that's what I'd say.
Well, great. All right. We're coming to a close here. I was hoping that each of you would be kind enough to share a cyber tip, and for everyone who's on here. So why don't I start with you, Tom, since you just finished up? Do you have a cyber tip for everyone here?
I kind of reiterate the walk thing, I guess, because it for integrators, I think it's really about getting your own house in order. I think that's the first step. And then, once you take that step, it's about moving on to the next step, which would be to sort of adopt the mantra of, if we sell it, it's secure. So I can't emphasize that enough. You should get your company to the point where you feel confident saying that, and making that extremely prominent in your messaging to customers.
Thank you. Brian, can you share a cyber tip for us?
Yeah, I'm going to echo exactly all you guys. One thing I would throw in is not to be afraid to talk to your customer about cybersecurity. Reach out to who their InfoSec officer is and have those conversations. and create that relationship, because again, like Jim mentioned, it locks you into the customer. It creates really great communications.
Yeah, great point, especially when that assessment comes across. Have a conversation. Matt, cyber tip?
Be persistent with your cybersecurity training practices. Be sure to work that into your company culture. Many folks might see this as an annoyance at times, but it's better to be annoyed than experience the alternate, right?
Right. I agree. Sometimes I see the program starts and then especially if they're not using automation, and next thing you know, it sort of trickles off. Jim, do you have a cyber tip for us?
Yeah, really, it's real simple, right? Listen to your customers, listen to your own teams, right? Read as much as you can about cyber. Read about what's going on in the world. Read about what's happening, what's being taken place, and what's going on, and learn. It's really about learning as much as you can, because there's so much to it, right? And there is a lot of information out there. So the more equipped you are, the better that you know, and the better that you're informed, the better you're going to be for you and your customers.
Well, if you're on this webinar, hopefully you're learning some things. Let's go to Shanna.
My cyber tip is, it echoes a lot of what everybody else has already said as far as keeping your own house in order and doing the cybersecurity awareness training with the employees. At least, there may be a little bit of an inconvenience with stopping and watching a really fun animated video with John Lovitz once a month, but at least you're choosing when the inconvenience occurs. Those of you who have a little PTSD from your cyber incident know that it's always at the most inopportune time. But also go to defendify.io/essentials. Sign up for 3 free tools, get signed up for threat alerts, like Jim said, stay up to date on the industry, run an external network vulnerability scan. So as Matt said, you see what the attackers would see from the outside and ways that they could get in, and do a risk assessment against yourself. Find out where your holes and weaknesses are.
Awesome.
Shameless plug. Woo.
Love it. Hey, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join on the panel. Thanks so much. I think it was some great information for everyone. And for everyone who joined us, thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.